Sometimes life throws bold moments at you, like finding the perfect vacation or finding the ideal location. At BOS, we're there to help you meet those moments with bold confidence. So whether it's managing money for future plans or getting what you need to start planning your dream, we're here to bring you a better banking experience. Make the bold move and switch to BOS today.
Hi, this is Ron Kincher. This is the Business Spotlight brought to you by Bank of Springfield. And we have a couple of guests with us. We have Harry Clark and Kiana Reed. They are with Quincy Medical Group, and you are with the Thriving Minds Grant Program. So this is Mental Health Awareness Month, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But what is the Thriving Minds Grant Program? Kiana, let's start with you.
Yeah, so the program is a partnership with Clarity. And basically, the grant program takes barriers away, such as transportation and financial barriers from students and families who may not have access to services such as mental health services. Okay. So we meet with students at schools, during their school hours, to take away that, and it's completely funded through the grant, so families do not get charged at all. So
no charge for the actual therapy that you're doing,
correct.
Things like now, is there times where they need to be brought to the medical group or Clarity or something like that?
It mainly depends on what time we're meeting with them.
Okay.
So we also do this program throughout the summer. While school is doing summer school, we're able to meet with students at the schools. But after that, then we would meet with them at the clinic. It's still completely covered by the grant, though,
okay.
So it is still a completely free service.
So what age are we talking here as far as kids go?
We actually provide services from anywhere from preschool up to high school.
Okay. The one thing I want to address today is like the grade school level, like first through fifth grade, because kids do have issues at that age, but I think it might be harder for parents to recognize what those issues are. But first, have those issues gotten worse since COVID, or are things getting better for the younger kids in schools these days? What are you seeing?
I think it's kind of different for each of the different levels, especially with kids who kind of came through the lockdowns and everything. There's definitely a lot of like anxiety, especially in groups, especially when people are starting to get sick, that I think really impacts a lot of them. But students who were kind of younger or maybe only spent a little bit of time during that period, they do better. I think there is a pretty big focus on like the online community, so people who are on their phones, people who are talking to others through video games, things like that. So they're still able to be social through that, but then the face-to-face and in-person things are still a little awkward.
So kids like age 5 to 10, Kiana, do they develop these issues? Are they born with these issues, or a combination of both? Yeah,
so what we know is really, if we can tackle anything that could impact a student or a child from ages really 0 till 3 is like the best. Okay. During that time, we see that mental health-wise, the impact is not quite as great.
But you can recognize something that young?
Yeah, you can. It's kind of crazy, right?
It is crazy.
But there's telltale signs, so to say, that we can look for. I will say, obviously, like in babies and like the infants, we aren't looking for anxiety and things like that, although they can be there with different attachment styles and whatnot.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So let's start there then. So 0 to 3, what would be a sign if you're a new mother or father and you've got a 0 to 3-year-old, and I mean, they don't necessarily, can they act out at that age? I mean, what do you see?
Well, really, we're looking kind of more towards like attachment styles. So when we say attachment styles, we're saying, does the baby feel secure enough being taken care of? And we can see signs of that not being met at that age. We know that if something impactful, let's just say, like, as you mentioned, COVID happened to a child, when they are at the age like 1 through 3, there could be an impact to it. If we can get to it sooner then and provide services and interventions, then it's not going to carry on with them quite as impactful as they get older, so into that like grade school age.
Okay. I mean, you hear stuff like terrible twos and things like that, and is there such a thing as kids are going through a phase, or can those phases actually be brought on by a mental health issue?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both
I'll
in a
let you
sense.
talk a little bit.
Developmentally, there are phases, right? So the brain's developing at different age groups, and what comes with that are things like what we would call the terrible twos. So there, we do have what's called quote unquote guidelines for normal behavior during that age. And what we look at then is like outside of those normal behaviors, what would be considered quote unquote abnormal that we would then maybe look at too. Is there something else going on?
Okay. Harrison, let's say it's early grade school, first, second, third grade, and you feel like you've got a terrible kid or just acts out all the time, things like that. How do you separate that normal behavior from behavior where they need to engage people like you?
It's definitely tougher, especially with younger kids, because how much is it just the kid who's maybe not used to, especially going from like preschool, kindergarten, first grade, even at school, there are big expectation differences, right? Like in preschool, you can run around. Kindergarten, there's a little bit more structure. So it could be just as easily as, just kind of struggling with that shift in dynamic as opposed to having some kind of mental health problem. That's one where if it's continually happening or if it is something that is kind of debilitating to their ability to continue on through those stages, that's where you might want to talk to a therapist or a counselor at that point.
But how do you recognize when it's time? I guess that's the question. How do you recognize when that time has come rather than just being, that's just Steve being Steve? I mean, is there a specific, I assume it's different with every kid, but you bet it's either, I think it would be better to err on the side of caution than not, but.
It's more of if they're not meeting, like if they're showing that they're not able to kind of meet those standards for each. Define
standards, though. I mean, are you talking about like ABCs and stuff like that, or what are we talking?
Especially with like younger kids, it's being able to sit and follow directions at one point, being able to interact socially with other students, being able to kind of hit these things that lead to positive development and show that they're able to kind of continue on and really interact with everybody else, or is it something that's keeping them from doing that? Are they reserved? Are they not really going out and trying to do some of these things that you would see other kids their age do at that point?
So, Kiana, would it be an only child be different than a child with additional siblings as far as their behavior potentially in a school?
There could be. Really what we want to look at is the impact that it's having on that child's life. So if the child is still being able to go through their daily routine with little to no impact negatively, then there's probably not too much for concern. But when it's starting to be like even at, that grade school level that you're talking about, the kids crying all the time because they don't want to go to school, like, well, then maybe we're looking at like, okay, what's really going on here? And like you said, it's always like better to decide on the side of caution. When that impact is really happening, when you're fighting your kid all the time, they just refusing to get out of bed, they don't want to interact with their peers and whatnot. Those are the kind of concerns that we look for where we're saying like, okay, maybe there's something underlining here.
Are you seeing that there's a stigma with the parents reaching out to people like you that they just don't want to bring their kids to you guys because they don't want to feel like their kid is not quote unquote normal? Are you running into that at all?
I will say with society changing, it's gotten better.
Good.
Do we have a long way? Sure. But I always say slow progress is still progress. I think we're also seeing that we're talking about it more. Kids are talking about it more. And so that has helped a lot as well in terms of them, parents seeing it more so of like, okay, you know what, like we just want our kids to be kids in the way that they know how. So they are reaching out a little bit more because they may not quite know what's going on, but they're like, something doesn't quite feel right. And so then they're trying to figure that out.
So are you seeing that this is more common now than it was 20, 25? I know you're not that old, but like are studies saying that this is more common, the mental health issues with kids now than it was 20, 25 years ago, or is this being recognized more now, or what are you hearing?
Definitely being recognized more, and I think kind of like what you brought up earlier, I think COVID actually played a pretty big part in that by showing that, okay, there are a lot of mental health concerns that people can go through And it's really bringing the conversation back to that as opposed to, you know, you're a bad parent because your kid doesn't want to go to school. Like it could be there are some underlying issues, you know, on why the child might not want to go to school at that point, or that could be leading to some behavior problems in class and things like that.
I'm assuming the last resort is medication. I'm assuming, but that is a potential option for some of these kids, right?
Yeah.
Now, what you hear though is the kids are so doped up when they go on this medication. Is that what you guys are seeing, or are there medications that don't necessarily do that for the kids, or?
There's different types of medications. So really, like when we're talking about mental health, especially in the age group that we've been discussing, a lot of the common like disorders we might see are like your ADHD, anxiety, sometimes depression. And so it depends on the type of medication. As a therapist, we always leave that choice up to like families and whatnot. There are stimulants and there are non-stimulant ones, so they're going to react to the brain differently. The purpose of these medications, though, is like when we see these disorders, we see that the brain is missing something. So that's where the medication comes in. It's supposed to kind of make the brain more balanced in what that child may not be having. And so I always like to warn families and students, it's a process and it's a journey because you got to figure out the right combination.
Yeah.
You got to find the right medication for that child in particular.
So can seasons have an effect on kids like they do on adults? Hear about seasonal disorder when the weather gets colder?
Absolutely.
It does?
I know, especially with students, you know, that are going to school pretty regularly. Sometimes even the summer can be difficult for them because they had a period of time where they're able to see their friends every single day, and you know, summertime, depending on where they live at, that could cut off that communication or that interaction, which could lead to like a depressed mood or, you know, some issues there.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that parents should know that they need to be looking for, or sign? You know, I'm not an expert. You guys are the experts. Am I missing anything here?
I think just like listen. Like if your child is saying this is impacting me, listen to them. I think sometimes parents can kind of be quick to be like, well, you're a kid, you know, like you don't know better, or like you don't know how good you have it, you know, kind of thing. And it's not that that's what it is. They're trying to communicate in the way that they know how. Like, this is bothering me. This is what I'm noticing. And so just taking the time to have that conversation of like, tell me more. Like,
are there words that parents should be looking for that they use, or is it just the manner in which they say it?
I think especially at the age that we're talking about, behavior is their main form of communication. And so, you know, noticing when that changes a lot, and that's going to be your first kind of like red flag, so to say.
All right, well, thanks for coming in, guys. And you are with the Thriving Mind Grant Program at Quincy Medical Group, Kiana Reed, Harrison Clark. And this has been the Business Spotlight. I'm Ron Kinshirf, and this has been brought to you by the Bank of Springfield.